Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's session of the Biostatistics and Research Methodology program. We are honored to have with us Dr. Mojeed Akorede Gbadamosi, a distinguished public health scholar and seasoned biostatistician with over 2 decades of academic and research experience. Dr. Gbadamosi is a fellow of the Africa Institute of Public Health Professionals and currently serves as lecturer and biostatistician at the University of Rwanda. Throughout his career, he has taught and mentored countless students in biostatistics and epidemiology, coordinated impactful research at the School of Medicine and Pharmacy, and contributed extensively to scholarship on non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and nutrition-related conditions. His publications in leading journals, including BMC Public Health and Global Health Action, as well as his roles as peer reviewer and expert advisor, reflect his deep commitment to advancing public health knowledge and practice across Africa. Through teaching, research, and service, Dr. Gbadamosi continues to champion the application of biostatistics as a tool for improving population health and informing policy. It is therefore with great pleasure that I invite him to lead us in today's session. Dr. Gbadamosi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you can hear me, let me know so that we can commence our discussion.
Good evening and welcome, sir.
We can hear you.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, without taking much of your time, because we have a lot to talk about within a speed of less than 2 hours, hopefully. I congratulate all of you who have been attending our sessions since we started in April. Thank you so much, and we appreciate your commitment. And I believe that your dedication is going to pay off at the end of the day. We're looking at reporting research with clarity and impact. So we're going to provide some practical tips and guides to academics and, of course, practitioners. Presenting to a mix of audience presents with some challenges because we have practitioners online, we have academics, some who are senior colleagues, and we have students. So what we always do is to find a common ground to ensure that we take care of everyone as much as we can. So let's go to the next slide and begin the discussion. Now, here we are looking at the report itself. So, but before we dive into the presentation itself, I would like us to participate in a simple exercise. It will border on this title, One Research, Three Stories. So we are conducting one research, but we are telling 3 stories, taking into consideration different audience that may utilize our research findings. So here we have the result of a study. In a sample of 300 farmers across Rwanda, Let me see what your response will be. Someone typed volume is off. Can you hear me? Let me know. Okay, thank you. So let's type in the comment section our response to the question. How will you share that information with researchers, with policymakers, and farmers cooperative? So I'm waiting. So can someone tell us how you will communicate this with fellow researchers? Type in the chat box. Anyone?
Yes, your question is how do we share this with fellow researchers and not policymakers and not farmers cooperative? Or how do we share to the three bodies? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, you can take anyone that you are. You can say it if you don't want to type. Everybody will listen. Let's say, for example, you want to communicate these findings to researchers. How would you present it?
Okay, having impact on this study, I will report the percentage. Okay, let me type it. I better type it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, someone else can type how she or he would report this to policymakers. Another person can tell us how she or he would report this to a farmers cooperative. Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you, Mira. Professor Muhammadu says by publishing the results in reputable journals. Very good. Yes, these are some of the media that we can use to convey this information. But what I want is the content of what we are going to write as an example. So I'm trying to prep us into what we will be talking about in terms of how do we communicate our research findings. Because when we start the research, when we begin the research journey, we have the audience in mind. So we take care of the needs of each of the audience, and we have a mix of audience that we are targeting. Some
Hello,
of them
hello, sir.
are, yes. Yes, please go ahead. Okay, so we have a mix of audience that we are going to communicate our findings to, and each of them has different requirements. So that is the whole essence of this exercise. For example, if you want to communicate this finding to fellow researchers, you can simply
Sir,
write.
these findings suggest a positive reception and willingness amongst farmers to integrate innovative agricultural practices.
Okay, so you are responding, Inibong, you are responding to Farmers Cooperative?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Having had the total sample size of 300 and
Okay,
the adoption rate of drought-resistant seed is 70%. If we, I'm presenting the findings suggesting a positive reception and willingness amongst farmers to integrate innovative agricultural practices to combat the challenges posed by the drought.
sorry. Uh, okay, fine. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the response. Okay, so now
Sir.
let me give us a bit of how we can communicate these findings to each of the audience or recipients of these findings. To fellow researchers, for example, we may say a cross-sectional study of 300 farmers across 3 provinces found a 70% adoption rate of the new seed variety within 6 months. Adoption was higher among farmers with access to training programs. P-value less than 0.01. I'll repeat again. A cross-sectional study of 300 farmers across 3 provinces found a 70% adoption rate of the new seed variety within 6 months. Adoption was higher among farmers with access to training programs. P-value less than 0.01. Now, you see, this particular presentation focuses on technical details, talking about study design, talking about p-value, and key finding. To policymakers, you would emphasize something else. For example, you can say 70% of farmers adopted the drought-resistant seed within 6 months. With similar support programs nationwide, adoption could reach 200,000 households, improving food security in drought-prone regions. So for policymakers, you would notice that the emphasis is not on technical details, but on impact and scalability. The fact that you can scale up this program to different households in other regions that are prone to drought. Now, to farmers cooperative, your presentation could be: most farmers who tried the new seed saw good harvest and switched to it within 6 months. Your members could benefit from the early access and training on best planting practices. So what is the farmers union or cooperative? What are they interested in? They are interested in practical benefits. They are not interested in technical details, neither are they interested in impact or scalability. For them, they want practical benefit. So the main message that we can take from this simple exercise is that effective research communication adapts to the needs of the audience, not just the data. So you cannot use the same communication means to reach diverse audience. You need to tailor your presentation according to specific audience that you are targeting. So that is the whole essence of this exercise. Let's move to the next slide. So it's very important for us to know which audience are we targeting and what exactly we are communicating to them. Thank you. Now, at the end of this presentation, we expect that you'll be able to deconstruct the IMRAD structure, not as four isolated sections, but as a single coherent argument. You'll be able to adapt the core research narratives for distinct audiences like academics, practitioners, and policymakers, as we demonstrated in the simple exercise. To be able to identify and mitigate ethical pitfalls and common errors in research communication. And lastly, to be able to apply practical strategies to enhance the clarity and impact of your writing. So let's go to the next slide. Now, we are looking at reporting research with clarity and impact. So what is research reporting itself? Now, a research report is a well-crafted document that outlines the processes that you used, the data and the findings that you got of your research. Of course, we know that research is a systematic investigation. So a research report is an important document that serves as a first-hand account of your research process. So it is a document that includes your research questions and the rationale. That is, why did you conduct the research? Why do the questions that you ask, why do they matter? Then it also includes your methods. How were data connected? How were they analyzed? What tools did you use? What procedures were involved? Which design did you follow? And it includes your results or findings. So what was observed? What did you discover? So here is where you use charts that someone suggested that we can use. You can use charts, you can use tables, as we have discussed in data visualization. Now, it also includes discussion or interpretation. So this is where you are going to tell us what the results mean, how do they relate to other studies, and what are the implications. Then it includes conclusion. So this suggests that we are looking at academic presentation. So most of the discussions will actually border on what obtains in the academic field. Now, we look at the core principle. So now, in the core principle, you must bear in mind that research should be viewed as a narrative. You view research as a narrative. And the key message I want you to take home from this slide is that your research report is not just a mechanical assembly of sections having introduction, the methods, the results, and discussion. It is a persuasive narrative. So it means that your goal is not just to inform, but to convince your audience of your findings' validity and importance. So you are actually guiding them on a logical journey from your question to the answer that you produced. So the first important aspect is that you must see your research more than a collection, your research report more than a collection of sections. So there are pitfalls that you need to avoid in doing this. For example, treating each section as a separate siloed box that you have to tick off. So doing so is going to create a disjointed experience where the reader must work to connect the dots on their own. So you must use narrative approach so that they can view your entire paper as a single flowing argument, where each section becomes a crucial chapter in that particular story. So, for example, the introduction could be viewed as once upon a time, where you are going to set the stage, where you're going to introduce the key problem and state what the research question or the goal is. Then your method becomes the plan, which shows how you, the hero, intends to solve the problem. It will build credibility and allow the audience to follow the logic. So your results can then be viewed as the journey itself. It tells what happened when the plan was executed. So it means you have to present the findings clearly and honestly without interpretation. Your discussion will now be viewed as the resolution and moral. That is, what does it all mean? Looking at your findings, what do they mean? How has the initial problem been resolved or advanced? This is where the story's significance is revealed. So the discussion is where you are going to reveal the significance of the story. So we expect you to tell a story, not just presenting different sections of a paper. So you think of it in this way. No one will enjoy a story where each chapters are out of order or they have nothing to do with each other. So you, as a researcher, you, as an hero, must present your research in the same narrative pool so that everything connects. Secondly, you need to build a compelling case where there must be a logical flow. So in this case, the strength of your argument will depend on the connections, the seamless connection between each part of your story. You must never leave the audience wondering, why are you telling me this now? So from your introduction to your method, your research questions and hypotheses must directly dictate the methods that you choose. They must be able to answer the question. Your method must be able to answer the questions that you have asked in your introduction. Now, from your methods, we must see the logical flow to the results. The results must be the direct output of the methods that you described. There mustn't be any mismatch. There must be that coherence. You cannot present results for an analysis that you did not mention in your methods. Then from your from your results, we must see a logical flow to the discussion where every key finding will be interpreted. The discussion should not introduce...
Please, sir, can you repeat that, sir, please? Can you repeat that, please?
I'm saying that there must be a logical flow from your result to your discussion, where every key findings must be interpreted. So you are going to interpret the findings in the results. So it is where you are going to tell us what do they mean? What are the implications? Maybe for practice, maybe for policy, but you must not introduce a new result. Now, the third thing that I want you to bring in mind is that you must carry readers through the journey. They should always know the why. Guide the reader at every point. Your reader must understand the purpose of the information that you are providing. So how do you do that? Posting is the key. You use transition sentences to signal what is coming and why they are coming. For example, you can say, having established the gap in the literature, we will now outline the methods designed to address it. So you are signaling what is coming after that section. So you must also anticipate questions. How do you do that? A good narrative anticipates the reader's questions. Your methods should answer, how did you do that? Then the discussion should answer, so what? Before the reader even asked you, or before they ask that question in their mind, because they have your paper. Now, for our practitioners who are online, it is very critical. They need to know, they need to understand not just the results, but why. Should they trust them? How should they use them? Because practitioners are very practical. They need something that is going to, they are interested more about the impact and the scalability. So what does that mean and how can they use it? So this is very important to policymakers. So the narrative that you are going to build is something that is going to entrench trust in the findings. For academics, it will demonstrate the logical and the robustness of the scholarship. So your story that you tell should serve everyone. So that is the main point that we are putting across in this one. So let's go to the next slide. Now, like I said, the focus is on academic reporting. Bulk of the presentation is on academic reporting. So in academia, we use the IMRAD format, especially publishing. I'm not talking about the thesis, because thesis is one of the ways of also reporting your research findings. But we are focusing more on publishing for wider audience. So we have the IMRAD. The IMRAD, as you see, stands for Introduction, Methods, Results, and Discussion. So that is what is going to guide subsequent slides. So let's move to the next slide. We look at each component of IMRAD and we provide examples. Now, introduction. What are we doing in the introduction? We are establishing the why. Okay, this is where your story provides a crucial opening chapter. So you move from the general territory to a specific gap. So this is where you are going to map the journey. Now, the narrative function is where the arguments of your research will be made. So the introduction is not just a simple background summary. It is the narrative function where you are going to construct a persuasive argument for why your study is not just interesting, but necessary. So it answers the reader's most fundamental question: why should I care? To my seniors who are here and researchers who review research reports, be it a thesis or a manuscript, this is the question that we always ask. Even the readers who would pick your paper, your research report, the question on their mind is, why should I care? So it's where you are going to convince them. So the entire introduction section should follow a simple but powerful storytelling logic. For example, you can start from what is known. This is where you establish the territory. So you begin by broadly orienting your mixed audience to the field. They must be able to identify the field within which that study was conducted. Establish the importance and context of the research area. This is going to provide a common ground for everyone, be it students, lecturers, practitioners, policymakers. All of them will be taken care of once you establish the territory. Then you move to the second one. What is unknown? So this is where you are going to establish the gap, synthesizing the literature to identify the gap. So it could be the gap in our knowledge, it could be contradiction, it could be unanswered question, it could be debate and controversies that experts in the field are talking about. So it's where you are going to build tension and create the need for your study. Then the third one is to show them how your research addresses that gap. So that will be the goal of the journey. So you should clearly state how your research directly addresses the gap. Your research question or hypothesis is going to be the launch point for the entire narrative that we follow. Now, you must think of your introduction like the first scene of a great film. Many of us like to watch movies. So your introduction is going to establish the context. It will introduce a conflict that would or the discrepancies that you, the hero, presents, and how your research is going to address that particular issue, which is going to be your mission. So without establishing this kind of controversy or conflict, there will be no story. Now the question will be, how do we craft a compelling story? To craft a compelling story, you must move from summary to synthesis. Many of us are fond of just producing a summary of the literature that you reviewed. without actually synthesizing the evidence. So this is what I expect you to include in that introduction part. One, you establish the territory. You can start broadly, briefly state the general importance of the topic. It could be the clinical importance, the theoretical debate, economic impact, depending on the field that you are. For practitioners, it answers, why is this relevant to my field? The second element is to synthesize literature to reveal the gap. If you do not reveal the gap, no one would value that work, because if you reveal the gap, then they can be able to see how your work has been able to or could fill that particular gap. So you don't just list authors and their findings, you have to synthesize the studies. You can group studies, you can highlight trends, you can identify consensus among researchers on that particular topic, or you can also highlight the debate. Then you tell us what is missing or what remains unknown. So for academics, this is where you are going to demonstrate your scholarly rigor. Number 4, state the research problem and question clearly. So you conclude that particular introduction section with a precise, clear statement of your research question, hypothesis, or objective, depending on your study design, because some study design do not require hypothesis, as we have discussed. So this is how you can do that. Then you must avoid the book report. So the book report is where you are going to say author A found X, author B found Y, and so on and so forth. That will be a summary, not an argument. So if you follow the book report, the consequence is that you have a disconnected list of studies and their findings that will bore your readers, because you have failed to build a logical case for your work. So your literature review should be an argument, not an inventory. So you are the guide, curating existing knowledge to make a point. And what is the point that you are making? The point is that there is a gap in the literature. So for our postgraduate students, it is where you make the difference between a pass and a distinction. For everyone, it is where you are going to make a difference to the readers who will continue to read your work, or who will just be discouraged and move ahead. So let's move to the next slide. Now let's look at this example. Is an excerpt from a paper. It says coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19 is associated with diffuse lung damage. Corticosteroid modulates inflammation-mediated lung injury and thereby may progress to respiratory failure and death. Although corticosteroids are widely used in patients with COVID-19, their benefit is uncertain. The World Health Organization accordingly advises against the use of corticosteroids. The randomized evaluation of COVID-19 therapy, what we call recovery trial, was designed to provide conclusive randomized evidence on the efficacy of dexamethasone in patients hospitalized with COVID-19. Now, if you look at this example, is an excerpt from a paper. If you look at this example, you will see the elements that we have talked about in the previous slides. Okay. You will see, for example, the research territory. it establishes what disease are we talking about, COVID-19. And it also talks about the pathophysiological rationale for treating, for the treatment, which is what? Corticosteroids modulating lung injury. It also talks about gap in the literature by clearly stating uncertainty. That is, their benefit is uncertain. It tells us that their benefit is uncertain, and it cites a major health body, the WHO, and their position against its use. Then it now tells us how that particular research addresses the gap. It states that the purpose of the recovery trial is to what? Provide conclusive randomized evidence on this specific question. So that is what we are talking about. So it tells us that the problem is lung injury in COVID-19. And what is the solution? Corticosteroid. But we don't know how it works. So our study was designed to find out. So I hope you can see the points that we are making. So when you tell a story like this, it excites the readers. We can move to the next slide. It excites the readers to follow. They want to see what is coming next. So you need to establish the territory, tell us what the research is all about, identify the gaps in the knowledge or practice or policy, whichever one is relevant in your specific research. Then you tell us how your particular research addresses that gap. So that is how we build a compelling story. So let's move to the next slide. I can't see the slide again. So, Mira. Thank you. Let's go to the next slide. Now, the method section. So, the method section is, this is where we are going to tell exactly what we did. How did we do it? So that we can build trust for the findings that we reported. As a reviewer myself, when I get a manuscript, the first section that I read is the method section. Because the how is more important than the why. Why did you do this study, which is in chapter 1, or which is in the introduction. No matter how much what you are promising to do, or what you promised, or what you are telling us you did, if the how is faulty, then I cannot have a trust in the result that you presented. So it's where you are going to build trust in your findings. And of course, any researcher anywhere in the world can follow your methods that you describe and also see if they obtain similar results. That is replication. So what are the key elements of the method section? The method section must justify the methodological choices. Why did you choose the design that you have chosen? If you are using an observational study design, for example, if you are using a case control study, why? You have to provide justification. You don't just tell us that you conducted a case control study. You must justify why not a cohort study or an experimental design. Not only that, you must talk about the population. Why did you study this particular population? And why did you conduct this specific set of analysis? Then you must also provide details that will enable researchers anywhere in the world to repeat the process so that we have comparable findings or results. So the structure must enable it must be structured in such a way that the flow of how you did the study is clear to everyone. So what to avoid is a simple list of procedures without rationale or a logical flow. So you can't just list what you did without justifying why did you choose those methods, why those analyses, why the population. So these are very important. Let's go to the next slide, please. So these are what you would need to keep in mind. Let's look at this example. It says, is an excerpt from an abstract. We conducted a randomized, controlled, open label trial comparing a range of possible treatments with usual care in patients hospitalized with COVID-19. We randomly assigned patients to receive oral or intravenous dexamethasone for up to 10 days or to receive usual care alone. The primary outcome was 28-day mortality. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. Now, on the statistical analysis, says pre-specified analysis were performed on an intention to treat basis according to the patient randomized treatment assignment. We used the Kaplan-Meier method to estimate cumulative mortality and used a long-run test to compare the two groups. The results are presented as hazard ratios with 95% confidence intervals. All p-values are two-sided. So these are the excerpts. Now, if you look at the two excerpts, you will see a justification for the design because it explicitly states that a randomized control trial was conducted. And we know that the randomized control trial is a gold standard for evaluating efficacy of a drug. Then it gives sufficient details because it specifies what drug are we talking about, what route, duration. Then it provides the comparator. The comparator is the usual care and the precise outcome. The outcome is 28-day mortality. Then the statistical analysis paragraph is also clear. It names the specific tests and methods that were used. So, and of course, we can see the logical flow. So the method section is carefully organized into subsections. We look at patients, we look at the procedures, the randomization, the outcomes, statistical analysis. So it makes it easy to follow. And of course, any researcher anywhere in the world can just follow your methods that you detailed in your paper and conduct their own research. It answers the question, what exactly did you do? And you can see that this is going to build trust in the minds of the audience because you have provided rigorous design and there is transparent reporting. So let's go to the next slide, please. Now, the results section is where you directly answer your research questions that you posed in the introduction. If you tested hypothesis, this is where you are going to see whether the null hypothesis is accepted or it is rejected. So now, when you are presenting the results, these are the key principles you have to bear in mind. Present your findings in a logical sequence that mirrors your research questions. This is very important. So, aside from the social demographics, for those of us who are in health and social sciences, we will start the presentation with the social demographic characteristics of the study population. Aside from that one, your finding must be according to your research questions. So it means you start with the first research question, then you move to the second research question, then to the third research questions, depending on the number of research questions that you have. You use relevant presentation format. If table is the most relevant, this has been discussed in previous discussions. If table is the most relevant presentation format, you are going to use table. If visual presentation would be more relevant, you use them. Then you must report your results objectively. Do not interpret your report, your results here, because the interpretation is done in findings. And I'll say this especially to students. This is something that I see almost on daily basis when I read research reports from students, especially now in the era of AI, whereby there is a widespread misuse of AI. I'm not saying don't use AI. I cannot claim that, but there has to be ethical use of AI. So AIs like ChatGPT would interpret the result for you. It will say, this implies that. Things like that you'll find in. So we do not expect interpretation in the finding. It must be an objective presentation of what you found without your subjective opinion, because your subjective opinion is allowed in the discussion session where you are going to interpret the findings. So avoid interpreting the results, and also avoid repeating what is apparent in the tables, charts, graphs, or any other visual. You need to, your textual presentation must complement the table, charts, and visuals. This we have discussed, not repeating them. So you also avoid presenting the results in a disorganized manner. Let's move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Now, let's look at an example. A total of 6,425 patients were randomized. 2,104 patients were allocated to receive dextrostomane, and 4,321 to receive the usual care. Overall, 482 patients, amounting to 22.9% in the dextrostomane group, and 1,110 patients, which is 25.7% in the usual care group, died within 28 days. Adjusted ratio is 0.83, and 95% confidence interval is also presented. The p-value is less than 0.001. Now, if you look at this result, you will find that the results explains, or it clearly tells us what was found, but avoided interpreting the findings. It did not tell us that this means that, this implies that, That is not what we saw. It just presents an objective finding and saved the interpretation to the discussion session. So let's go to the next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, I cannot see. Now we look at the discussion section. This discussion session is where you are going to synthesize what the results mean. So the narrative function is that it is where your findings is where you are going to tell what your finding mean. How did they fit into the wider world, and what are the implications of the findings? So these are the key elements that we are going to look for. Begin with a succinct restatement of key findings. This is very important. Some people will just jump straight into the discussion section without first summarizing key findings. You need to summarize the key findings. Remember, your audience has moved through different sections. They are now nearing the end of your paper. You need to remind them of what are the key findings from the previous sections. Then the next thing to do is to now interpret the results. What do they mean? This is where you are going to compare. You compare your findings with the existing literature. And if they agree, you may not have much to do again. But if they disagree, you need to provide plausible explanations as to what could explain the divergence between what was found in previous studies and what you found in your study. Usually you look at methodological issues. You look at the sample size, for example, you look at the population, there are differences in the Rwandan population compared to those in the United States of America, for example. So you explain what could be meaningful reason why you have the disagreement or the divergence. Then every study must acknowledge limitations. You must acknowledge limitation. Acknowledging limitation does not mean that it's not a negative thing. It's actually positive. It shows your scientific integrity. And you state the implications of the research. This is very key. So what are the implications for research? For example, if you have you used observational design and you noted the limitations of such design. For example, you use cross-sectional design. You may recommend that future studies should use maybe experimental design or whatever is going to give more robust evidence on that particular subject. Then you also discuss the implication for policy. What needs to change in policy as a result of your findings? Then, of course, for those who are in health, what will change in clinical practice? So avoid introducing new results, as I've said, or making claims that are not supported by your data. As simple as this seems, it is an error that is common to many. So avoid making causal claim. That's we're going to talk more about very shortly. And avoid introducing new results that were not reported in the findings. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so let's look at the excerpt. In this randomized control trial, the use of dexamethasone resulted in lower 28-day mortality among patients hospitalized with COVID-19 who were receiving respiratory support than among those receiving usual care. The finding of a larger treatment effect in patients who were receiving more respiratory support is plausible. Our results show that the survival benefit was greatest in patients requiring invasive mechanical ventilation. The results are consistent with the finding that prolonged low-dose prednisolone accelerated clinical recovery. The trial has limitations. It was conducted in a single country, and the open label design may have led to biases. In conclusion, among patients hospitalized with COVID-19, dexamethasone reduced 28-day mortality. These are excerpts. If you read the full paper, you can get the more information. So that is an example of a discussion section where you are going to interpret your findings, you state the implications, you also acknowledge the limitation. Now, if you look at this particular excerpt, you will find that it first restated the findings. It began by summarizing succinctly, very briefly, the main results. Not everything, just the key finding, something that you want everyone to remember about that particular study. Then it began by interpreting the results. What do they mean? For example, it says the finding is plausible. Then it explores the implications of the subgroup analysis. For example, it stated that greater effect with more severe disease. Then it contextualizes the findings with literature. It places the finding within the context of existing body of knowledge. That is why it uses terms like these results are consistent with, or you can say the findings are in agreement with previous study. So there are different ways you can put this. Then it also acknowledges limitations. It explicitly, without, without obscuring or any form of obscurity, it openly states that the study has limitations. And what are the limitations? It recognizes open label design, because like I said, every research has got limitations. Each of the design has limitations. You have to acknowledge the limitation. Then it also acknowledges the single country as a limitation. Perhaps if it has been a multi-country, the findings could have been more robust, or even some contradictory finding could have been obtained. And it also states the implication. So the conclusion is powerful. It is clear. It's a clear statement of the findings' significance for clinical practice. It fulfills the narrative. This is what we found. This is why it makes sense. And this is how it fits into the existing knowledge. These are the caveats. Beware. Those of you who are going to use our results, beware. And this is why it matters. So let's go to the next slide. So that's how we do the discussion section. So let's go into the next slide. All right, so now the next thing is for you to know your audience. This is very important. You have to know your audience. I said it at the beginning that when you are conceptualizing your study, your audience must be the first consideration. You must know your audience. Okay? So you tailor your presentation to the audience without diluting the science. So you must ensure that your narrative, the core principle is that the narrative is constant. Its expression is what becomes flexible. Your research findings must be the immutable core. However, the way and manner in which you frame and deliver the story must resonate with your audience primary needs. So if you are talking to fellow researchers, you are going to give them those technical details. They need the technical details and the scientific rigor. If you are talking to the policymakers, your emphasis, without changing your result, your findings must be communicated to them in the way that they can see what is the impact of that particular study. How can we scale up this research maybe to other regions? If you are talking to the practitioners, their own is about applicability. That's why we gave example of the farmers. How can we use the findings? Forget about the technical jargons. They are not interested. Just come to their level and tell them how can they adopt the finding. And I must say this, that even I am guilty of what I want to tell you, but we are trying to reorientate ourselves. We have done enough studies on, for example, identify the burden of diseases. It is time for us to actually go into solving the problem, action research. This is why FireRights comes in. Translational research is what we want to do. We don't want to just quantify the burden without profiling practical solutions. We must move from the laboratory straight onto the market. For those of us who are in that field, for example, those in microbiology, those in virology, and so on and so forth, we must move from the laboratory straight to the market. Our research must speak straight to the industry. We have to move to the point whereby our industries will also collaborate with researchers. We sit with managers and the board members and discuss how we can synthesize our knowledge and experience. So that is very important. The way in which we frame the story must resonate with the audience primary needs. So if you fail to adapt, then you are going to lose them. They will lose interest. Once they read the first part of the story, then they lose interest. Now, if you are talking to academic audience, the why and the how becomes very important. For example, you're talking to postgraduate students, lecturers, researchers, then the primary goal will be to evaluate the validity and contribution of your work to the existing body of knowledge. So you should expect full emerald structure if you are talking to them. So they are trained to consume information in the logical sequence. They have to move from introduction to methods to results and discussion. That is their native language. Now, you must emphasize the technical details and the scientific rigor. They want to see the statistical tests, the confidence intervals, the sample size calculations, and your methodological choices. So they also appreciate if you warn them that consumers of this information, beware. I mean, these are the limitations. And they also require comprehensive referencing. You must ground your work in scholarly conversation by citing relevant literature. You must be familiar with literature in your field if you are talking to them. So for academics, your presentation is a peer review in real time. They are asking the question, is this sound? Is this new? Can I build on this? So your job as a researcher is to provide evidence that answers yes to all the questions. So if you are dealing with practitioners and policymakers, the so what becomes more important to them because their primary goal is to understand the practical implications and what actionable takeaways they can take from your research straight to the field. So they need bottom line implications first. So you must recognize that they are very busy. So what you do is you invert the pyramid. Okay, you start with the most important conclusions when you are dealing with practitioners and policymakers. So you start with the most important conclusions and you emphasize real world impact. That's what they want. You focus on actionable recommendations. This is very important. This is very important. Even today, when I was reading some theses from my master's level students in public health, whatever I'm talking to you, I saw them. I always tell students, when you are making recommendations, don't make generic recommendations. Don't say the researcher recommends that education should be provided to lactating mothers about breastfeeding practices and all. Make it actionable. Who is going to educate? And when you say education, what specific education are you talking about? So actionable recommendation. So what should they do differently? Immediately after they finish your paper, once they are done with your paper, they put it down. What should they do differently? So you give them that one. Frame your findings as clear, practical steps, guidelines, and policy suggestions. That's going to help them. Then you must also avoid the use of jargons when you are dealing with practitioners. Avoid the use of jargon. Translate your statistical findings into plain language. Don't bore them with p-values and the odds ratios and whatever hazard ratios. Just use simple language that anyone who has attained secondary school education will understand. So that is very, very important. Now, the question now becomes, how do you satisfy both category of audience? How do you ensure that you take care of the needs of academics and you take care of the needs of policymakers and practitioners? So you use executive summary and you use what we call dual part structure. First, you announce your structure, you provide high-level overview of your key findings. That is going to take care of the needs of the policymakers and practitioners before you now go into methodologies and the results which academics are looking for. Then you use visuals. Visuals that will help them. So your goal is to be a translator. You are not changing any fact. You are not missing out any statistical findings. You are just changing your language. So you are trying to make to meet the specific needs of your audience. So let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Now, here we have the policy brief. Policy brief is it's a publication, a research report that you can use to communicate your research findings to policymakers. So this would give us a kind of outline or a structure that you can follow. You can start with the headline or the title, and your title must be clear and action-oriented. Remember, these are very busy people, and for them, the impact and scalability is more important. So you avoid, you avoid dense titles, but carefully worded and action-oriented titles are expected. For example, you can say reducing hospital readmissions through community health worker programs, a cost-effective strategy. If they see this one, they know what you are talking to them. You are introducing to them a cost-effective strategy that they can use to reduce hospital readmissions, of course, through community health workers. This is one thing that we have done and we have been doing successfully in Rwanda, for those who do not know. Then you have the second aspect, which is the executive summary. It provides the hook. So the entire brief must be in 3 to 4 sentences. So it's the only part that some busy executives will ever read. So you need to be careful with this. This is where you're going to state what the problem is, what are your key findings, and what is your top recommendation. So you put the bottom line on the top line. So this executive summary is very important. Some policymakers will not read the entire policy brief, but they are going to read the executive summary because it summarizes the entire research report. So if you are able to convince them through your storytelling method, then they may eventually read the entire paper. Then you move to recommendation. So you list 3 to 4 key actions in bulleted or numbered format. Use strong imperative verbs. For example, you can say the Ministry of Health must allocate funding for, they must amend policy on to include so and so. So they must launch pilot program to, so if you state these recommendations in actionable formats, which are bulleted, it becomes easier for them to follow. Then you come to the key findings, the evidence. You also use bulleted formats that will directly support your recommendations. Of course, you know that you cannot recommend something that you did not find in your study. For example, you can say patients in the intervention groups were 40% less likely to be readmitted within 30 days. Instead of boring them with a logistic regression, show that significant odds ratio, no, they don't need your significant odds ratio and all those technical or scientific jargon. They need plain language. Then the conclusion must show the urgency of the research findings. You must give a brief but powerful restatement of why the action is needed now. Why do they need to act now? You connect it to the shared values. And for example, you can link it to cost savings. Because if you are talking to policymakers, you must always help them to solve problems. Otherwise, they will read your paper as if they are reading newspapers and just throw it away. Once they read a few lines and it's not interesting, it's not telling them what they are expecting. You are not telling them how they can save cost. You are not telling them about equity issues. You are not telling them how they can achieve efficiency in their programs. Then you are not talking. The methods builds credibility. In a policy paper, it's often a single but powerful sentence that is going to establish scientific rigor without going into technical details. For example, you can say, these findings are based on a randomized control trial of 1,200 patients across 5 urban hospitals in Rwanda. So this one sentence is enough because it answers the question, why should I trust you? So for academic colleagues, it is not a replacement for your scientific paper, but it is a powerful advertisement of your findings to policymakers. So a policy brief will get your work off the shelf into the room where decisions are made, which is key. Many research findings are not implemented because they are communicated in the language that policymakers fail to understand. So let's go to the next slide, please. So we need to take cognizance of these points. A policy brief is a brief research report targeting policy implementation of your research. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so now we want to look at ethical imperatives in research. Ethical imperatives. Here we are going to look at 4 areas in terms of ethical considerations in research reporting. First one is honesty in reporting. And this is very important. You publish negative or null hypotheses. So if that is what you found, they are still valid science. Don't worry if you did not get what you expected. Remember, we said that your reporting, your research result must be reported objectively. Please report what you found. Avoid hacking, that is hypothesizing after the results are known. Your hypothesis must be a priori, not a posteriori. Transparency is the other one. We're going to look at each one. So transparency is the other one. Disclose all funding sources and potential conflicts of interest. Then the last one is data visualization integrity. Avoid manipulative graph axis, misleading scales, or cherry-picking data to create false impressions. So let's go to the next slide to see each of these imperatives that we are talking about. The first one is honesty in reporting all results, including null or negative findings. Now, let's look at this excerpt from the abstract. We obtain FDA reviews of 12 studies for 12 antidepressant agents. According to the FDA reviews, 94% of the trials conducted were positive. In contrast, 51% of the trials published in scientific literature were positive. Not only were positive results more likely to be published, but studies that were not positive, in our opinion, were often published in a way that conveyed a positive outcome. Now, if you look at this is actually a landmark paper. It did not find a single error. I mean, a single error in a single article, but it exposed a systematic ethical failure. What is that? Researchers and sponsors conducted studies, but only published the approximately 50% that showed positive effect, while withholding the remaining that showed no effect. So it makes the drug appear more effective in the scientific literature than they actually were. So this is a direct violation of the ethical imperative to report all results, whether they are positive or they are negative, whether they contradict existing findings in the literature or not. You have that ethical imperative to report all findings. Let's move to the next slide. Next slide. Next. It's not moving on my side, Mira. Okay. Avoiding hacking, hypothesizing after the results are known. This is an excerpt, but this is hypothetical. I made it up. Another example of hacking is the practice of including a large number of dependent variables in a study and then only reporting those that yielded significant results without acknowledging that the analysis were exploratory. So the problem is that the reported findings appear to be confirmatory, that is based on prior hypothesis, while they are in fact exploratory. This is something that is common, although this is made up, but it explicitly describes hacking. Is a practice where that is well documented across many fields, whereby you may find a researcher measuring 20 variables and they found only 3 are significant by chance, and they are going to report those 3 only and write the paper as if the 3 variables reported were the only ones that were investigated. So it is unethical because it hides the exploratory nature of the analysis, and it presents findings as predicted outcomes. So let's move to the next slide. Next slide. So next slide is talking about transparency in conflicts of interest and funding. So this is an excerpt from the results section. You can see the reference to the paper. Reviews found that industry-sponsored studies more often had conclusions favoring the sponsor's product compared with non-industry sponsored studies. We found consistent evidence that industry sponsors review tend to draw pro-industry conclusions. So this is another unethical practice. Now, it is a systematic review, and that systematic review synthesizes evidence that the source of funding is a powerful predictor of research outcomes. Unfortunately, this practice is very, very common in the Western world, whereby powerful industry will sponsor research and they would influence the findings that are reported by the researchers. It's unethical because it violates ethical principles of disclosing conflicts of interest and reporting the findings without bias. So let's move to the next slide. Now, this is integrity in data visualization, avoiding the spin. Now, this is an excerpt. Let's look at this example. A notorious real-world example often used in methodology lectures is from 2012. Political advertisement that used a bar chart for average middle class income, where y-axis started not at zero, but at $30,000. This made a small decline looks like a catastrophic drop. So this is the spin that we're talking about. You know, instead of starting at zero, so they deliberately started at 30,000. So any small increase will look like a big deal. Now, the paper documents what you can call selective reporting. So the ethical imperative for visualization is best shown through that example. Truncating the y-axis on a bar chart to exaggerate a small difference is a common unethical practice. So the ethical standard is that the bar charts should always include a zero baseline, as a visual comparison is of the area, the height of the bar. So for a bar chart, a non-zero baseline can, of course, sometimes be justified, but it must be made extremely clear to the reader so that you avoid the misinterpretation of your findings. So failure to do so, as we saw in that paper, would amount to deception, which is not allowed. Let's move to the next slide. Next slide. Okay, so here we are looking at authorship integrity. Authorship integrity. Yeah, that's what we are looking at here. Let's look at our excerpt. Our findings indicate that authorship disputes are prevalent and that they are associated with a variety of forms of researcher misbehavior and misconduct, including assigning authorship to people who do not meet authorship criteria and refusing authorship to those who do. Now, this is a common practice which is not limited to developing countries. A situation whereby someone did not have any intellectual contribution to your paper, but because they are your friends, or they are your colleagues, or they are your superiors, whatever they are, you put their names on the paper. So it shows an ethical violation. You see, it's something that is prevalent and it should be discouraged. For someone to be qualified as an author, you must have had substantive intellectual contribution to a research. Otherwise, you can simply acknowledge them in the acknowledgement section. So that is on that. Let's go to, let's look at how do we avoid these pitfalls. Let's look at them one by one. The mismatch. How do you avoid those ones? So we move to the first one, the common pitfalls, and how we avoid it. The first one is the mismatch, describing methods in the results section or interpreting results in the methods. So how do we deal with this? So this one, if you look at a phrase that says, because the results we are sensitive, for example, that will be an interpretation of the analysis outcome. In a result, we just report what we find. We do not interpret them. So that's how we avoid that one. Now, yes, let's go to the next slide. So the methods should simply state what was done. We conducted a sensitivity analysis using different prior distribution. So that is enough. So the justification that the result were sensitive belongs to the result or the discussion section, especially the discussion section. It's not in the methods. Let's go to the next slide. Overstatement. We look at overstatement, claiming causality from correlational data. Let's look at this example. It's a correlational data, but they are claiming causality. Consumption of sugar sweetened beverages was associated with a higher risk of CHD and some adverse changes in lipids, inflammatory factors, and leptin. This data suggests that consumption of sugar sweetened beverages may increase the risk of CHD in men. You can see the reference there. You see, this is perhaps the most common and serious pitfall that we need to avoid in observational research. Because as we discussed in study design and sampling methods, Dr. Felix explained clearly that observational studies cannot establish causation. It's only experimental study that you can use language that suggests cause and effect. So we need to be careful with the language that we use in our research reports. Avoid a language that will suggest a cause-effect relationship that your design does not support. The author correctly used some phrases like was associated with, but the final statement is where the problem lies. He says it increased the risk of, so that is the problem. So you can identify association if you conduct, for example, cross-sectional studies. You cannot prove causation. So you cannot prove that drinking beverages caused increase in the risk. So, and there are unmeasured confounding factors. For example, we have no information about the overall diet quality, socioeconomic status, which could also explain both the beverage consumption and the risk. So the appropriate conclusion should have been that it is associated with an increased risk, not that it causes it. So let's go to the next slide. We look at understatement using tentative language. The incidence of death was lower in dexamethasone group than in the usual care group in patients receiving invasive mechanical ventilation and in patients receiving oxygen without invasive mechanical ventilation, but not in patients who were receiving no respiratory support at randomization. So what is the problem in this one? The problem in this one is that the findings are stuck, and of course they are statistically robust, but the authors state the finding directly without tentative verbs like may suggest. If you say this may suggest or this could indicate, they present strong, clear result and then immediately define their boundary. They say, but not impatient. So which shows how clear, definitive findings should be presented. Some people would have very robust finding, but they will use phrases that will suggest that the findings are tentative, that they themselves doubt their own finding. So let's move to the next slide. Data dumping, that is presenting data without narrative. So this involves having many small generic association studies on complex diseases from nearly 2000s. A representative example will be a paper with a results section containing Table 1, baseline characteristics for 4 groups, Table 2, genotype frequencies for 10 SNPs, Table 3, association p-values for 10 SNPs with 3 disease subtypes, Table 4, multivariable adjustment for 5 SNPs. All of them with minimal text that simply says the results are shown in the table below. So what are we saying here? What we are saying here is that when you are reporting your research findings, avoid overwhelming your readers with excessive output. So many tables, so many statistical findings without a clear narrative to highlight something that they must always remember. So even if you have an impressive or an interesting table, you must have a text that highlights key takeaway from that particular table. You don't overwhelm the readers with so many p-values, your confidence intervals, your odds ratios, or whatever measure of effect that you have used without a text that bring home the key points. Let's move to the next slide. Jargon overload, failing to adapt language. This is hypothetical but highly realistic. We employed old transcriptome shotgun sequencing to elucidate differential expression of RNAs and sac RNAs in HCC specimen versus adjacent non-tumorous parenchyma. Our analysis reveals significant dysregulation of numerous ncRNAs, suggesting their putative involvement in hepatocarcinogenesis through cRNA network that sequenced mRNA and modulate the activity of target oncogenes and tumor suppressors. This is just too overwhelming. Only experts, researchers can understand these technical jargons. So you really have to come to people's levels. Let's move to the next slide. So avoid this kind of jargons. So how do we avoid these pitfalls in our research reporting? Number one, the methods and research mismatch. Example, because the results were sensitive, we use different prior distributions. How to avoid it? Enforce a strict boundary. The method section must describe how. The research section must report what you found. Number two, use verb tense correctly. Methods are described in the past tense. We conducted. Patients were randomized. Research sections are reported in the past tense. That is, the results were reduced. Let's move to the next slide. Thank you. Pitfall number two, overstating causal claim, the problem, implying a cause-effect relationship from a study design that can only show correlation or association. For example, observational studies. Example, pitfall. Consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages may increase the risk of CHD in men. How do you avoid it? Match your language to your design. Use cautious associative language for observational studies. For example, consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages are associated or correlated. This is okay. Use precise verbs. For example, you can say was associated with, is linked to, correlated with. Avoid causal verbs. Causes, increases, reduces, leads to. Unless the study design is what? Experimental, like randomized control trial. Let's move to the next slide. So pitfall number 3 is understating your study. The problem is using overly cautious language that undermines strong, clear, statistically robust results. Example of group practice to eliminate the incidence of death was lower in dexamethasone groups. That's a very good one. It's clear. How do you avoid and remedy it? State clear findings clearly. Do not edge when you have strong evidence. Don't be shy. If you have strong evidence, be confident in your findings yourself. Number 2, use direct language. We found a significant reduction. This data shows a clear difference. Things like that shows confidence. If you are not confident in your result, you do not expect someone to have confidence in your findings. Number 3, let the statistics speak. Report the effect size and confidence intervals with confidence. Reserve cautious language for uncertain or exploratory results, not your primary well-supported findings. So the principle is, if your p-value is small and your confidence interval is tight, your language should be strong. Let's move to the next slide. Now, pitfall number 4, data dumping. The problem, overwhelming the reader with tables and figures without a narrative guide. Example, a result section that just said the results are shown in table 1 to 4, followed by those tables. How do you avoid it? Number 1, lead the story. Lead with the story, not the data. Your text should be a guide, not a caption. Like I said, whatever you present, in whichever format, whether table, chart, or what, there must be something that the readers must take home, which will be in the narrative text. Number 2, structure your result around your research questions or hypotheses. We've explained that. Number 3, for every table or figure, write 1 or 2 sentences that states what? The key takeaways. Next slide. The next slide is jargon overload. Problem, making your work inaccessible by using field-specific shorthands and complex terms. Example, putative involvement in hepato. You saw that. How do you avoid it? Write for an intelligent colleague in a different field. If you are in public health, for example, write for someone who is in agric economics. Let them read your paper and critique it. Number 2, define all acronyms on first use. Okay, it's very important. Number 3, use plain language. Instead of putative, just simply say potential. Okay? Instead of elucidate, simply say find out or investigate. Let's move to the next slide. Now, the next slide is something that I want you to to do as a practical exercise in the next 5 minutes, if time will permit. Otherwise, you can read it and do a critique, put it online. I'm going to respond to them. So these are the tasks that I want you to do on that. Identify the weaknesses, poor structure, jargon, hidden key findings, rewrite it for clarity and impact for an academic journal, then distill it into 3 bullet points for a policy brief. So those are what I want you to do regarding those ones. Now let's go to the next slide and look at the key takeaways before I end the presentation. Let's go to the next slide. I want to give key takeaways. Then we end the discussion. I welcome questions. Next slide. Next slide, please. Next one. Next slide on key takeaway. Thank you. Now, the key takeaways is that you must structure your report as what? A logical, persuasive narrative. Number 2, write with a specific audience in mind. One size does not fit all. Of course, you're not going to change the statistical findings, but not everyone is interested in the scientific jargons. Number 3, uphold the highest ethical standards in how you present your data and findings. There is no need to lie or engage in unethical practices. Finally, clarity, precision, and honesty are the foundations of impactful communication. Thank you very much for your attention and participation. I welcome questions. Someone wanted to participate. I missed the name. It's flashed and disappeared. You can unmute yourself and let's have your comment or question.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello, good
Esther.
evening. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Esther.
Thank you very much. This has been very eye-opening for me. I wish I had all this information prior to my previous journals and presentations I've done. I am really grateful for this, and unfortunately, I joined very late, I think about an hour ago, and you were already at the result presentation part. Now, this question I'm going to ask, I think maybe you might have actually spoken about it, but since I wasn't here, I would not really get what you said. When you want to do an introduction, especially when your audience is the academic area. So, like, how do you do that introduction to like get their attention before you move on to your methodology and the rest?
Okay, thank you, Esther. Yeah, you are right. We discussed the introduction, but summarily, here is what I will tell you. We expect the entire research report to be crafted like a story. Okay, and the introduction is where you are going to establish the why of your study. Okay, you tell us about what is known, what is unknown, and how your research will address the gap that you have identified. So we spoke about some key elements that must be present in your introduction. For example, you must have established the research territory. What is the study all about? Then you must have conducted a thorough literature review, which of course will be synthesized. This is where we said that you have to move away from presenting a summary to now having a synthesis. So you synthesize the arguments. This is where you can show the trends in the literature. You can show those who agree, those who disagree, what is established, and what remains to be solved. Then you state your research question or your research problem or your hypothesis. So, and we also advised them to avoid a book report style, which will just list studies and their findings without critical engagement in terms of synthesis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir, for this.
Welcome. Questions, comments?
How can we get a recording of this video? Our mentor, Dr. Mojeed, please.
The director is going to respond to that. But I know you would have access to the recording. Those who have been joining from April, they know where to get it, but the director would provide information or someone from IT.
We'll be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Samuel, you are recognized. Okay, the link has been pasted. You can just copy the link. The link has been pasted by Mira. Samuel, you are recognized. Okay, if Samuel is not there, I see whose hand is up. Who is this? Okay, Samuel Okoyemi, yes, you are recognized. Please go ahead. Samuel, are you there? Samuel. Okay.
Good evening, Prof.
Good evening.
I don't know if it's I whom you are talking about or if it's some other somewhere on the call. But I will have to thank you a lot. This was very, very productive and insightful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yes. Okay. Samuel. I see Benjamin. I see Samuel. Your hands are up. Samuel, if you are there, you can talk.
All right.
Bamidele John,
Good evening, sir.
thank you very much. Okay. Yes, please go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me? All right.
I can hear you.
Thank you so much for the wonderful. All right, sir. Thank you for the presentation, sir. I have a question concerning methodology, method aspect.
Okay.
Concerning the method aspect, for example, when we are using like secondary data.
When we are using secondary data.
Like NDHX, mixed data, PM,
okay,
or what about data sets, for example, now. How do we structure our method? You know, it's different for primary data. I said, oh, this study, I'm using this method, I'm using perception, I'm using longitudinal, I'm using this kind of approach. This one has been conducted by a particular organization, and we are making use of it. So how do we write about their method? Like how do we present them in a
okay. I don't know if it's on my side. Your line was inaudible, but if I get your question correctly, you are using a data that was collected by someone else, like Nigerian Demographic and Health Survey, or the RDHS, the Rwanda Demographic and Health Survey. These are data that were originally collected by some organizations, which you are now using for your own research. So how do you report them in the methodology? Is that the question?
Yes, sir, that's the question, sir.
Okay, thank you. Now,
yes, sir, that's the question.
All right. The best practice is to provide a succinct summary, just a summary of their own methodology. Then you now explain how you collected the data from them, what specific data you collected, because you are not going to use all the data. Not all their methodology will be relevant to your own study. So you summarize the aspects that pertain to your own study. For example, DHS data, all of them are multi-stage. You need to mention that DHS use multi-stage sampling. That is very key. But in your own case, you would describe what specific data you extracted from the DHS and how did you manipulate the data. Remember, you'll be dealing with metadata. When they give you access to the database, you would have to merge some data sets. I give an example. If you see, I don't know if my student is here, if you see a publication that I had with a student here in Rwanda using RDHS data for 2010, 2014-15, 2019-20, 3 data sets. We were given microdata. So you have to use some commands in Starter to match these data sets. You describe the process that you went through in merging this data set, because the study was on children, but there were also characteristics of their mother. So mothers' data sets, they are different from the children data set. So you explain how you merge the data and what other manipulations that you did. I mean, if, for example, you generated socioeconomic status from the wealth index data or from so you describe the principal component analysis that you conducted. So that's how you handle that. What you did is what you are going to focus on more. You summarize the key aspect of their own methodology that pertain to your specific study, but you detailed what you did with the data. Thank you. Any other?
Thank you so much, sir.
Welcome. Any other comment
Okay.
or question?
It's me again, once again. Please, I would like to ask, when you were doing a graph presentation, like I'm a theoretical physicist, and let's say I'm doing a current voltage um curve, and let's say the current is in the y-axis and the voltage is in the x-axis. Is it necessary that they must have a zero baseline, or should it be like, okay, one of the axes should have a zero baseline, or both must have a zero baseline?
Okay, thank you very much for that. What you describe, I'm not in your field, what you describe seems like a line graph. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. The point that we made regarding spin on graphs and presentations is that you must not manipulate the axis to make to present the findings as though there are significant findings when you know that they are not significant changes. So that's the point that we made. It is not to say that every time they must go through the zero. They must start from zero, both y and x axis. The example we give is that of a bar chart, and in that example specifically, it should have started from zero so that the readers could see the impact of, because they are looking at the income, the impact of a change in income. But in your case, if your data does not necessarily need to start from zero, you just have to present your graph objectively. That's the point we are making. Do not manipulate the axis so that you can change the interpretation of the findings. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much, sir.
Welcome.
It does.
Any other question? Okay, our time is fast spent because there is something else that will be done in a few minutes.
I have a question, sir.
Okay.
A question, sir.
Yes,
All right,
please go ahead.
I actually work on a research. I work on a paper. GBV. When I reach after the analysis,
You are inaudible, Samuel. I can't hear what you are saying.
Okay, I said I work on the paper. Okay, can you hear me better now? Can you hear me better now, sir?
Yes.
I said I worked on a paper.
Okay.
Using secondary data. So, gender-based violence aspect, particularly. So when I did the analysis, I noticed that most of my sociodemographic characteristics that is attributed to GBV is only two that are highly significant with the study. So others are less significant. So in this kind of scenario whereby I'm making a discussion and relating it with other studies, there's this feeling that what you are doing is too narrow. I don't know if you understand me, sir. Like, you just feel like my findings is just like it's not compass, like it doesn't have more points to talk about. Like what kind of patient? I would just do reports like that, or we should add other variables to measure it, sir.
Okay, there
Did you get
are
my question, sir?
two. If I get your question correctly, you are using secondary data for your study, and
Yes, sir.
you found only social demographics positively or whatever associated with gender-based violence. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now,
That's correct, sir.
when you went into the literature, you found that other studies found more variables being positively associated with gender-based violence other than social demographics. Well,
Yes, sir.
there are two things I'm going to say quickly regarding that. Number one is that in research, we report what we found. We report what we found. And I'm not sure, I don't know how robust was your literature review, but let's assume that the literature differs from your own. Then what you need to do is to explain possible reasons why your findings differ from previous findings. This is where you are going to demonstrate your maturity as a researcher. You tell them the possible reason. For example, maybe since it is secondary data, it means the objective was not the same as your own objective. So they may not have collected some variables that may have been of interest to your own specific studies. So once you do that, you explain that one, then you acknowledge the limitation. So you have to acknowledge the limitation of that particular, so that wherever you give a caveat, that whoever is going to rely on your findings, we know that you have warned them that your finding is subject to this limitation, that vital variables were not captured. It is one of the major limitations of doing secondary data analysis. We also face similar challenges with hospital-based studies. I did a study with one of my postgraduate students. The paper is still under review with BMC cancer. Most of the variables that are established in the literature, they were not captured. This is a national data. I'm talking about the whole, cervical cancer data for Rwanda. But most of the variables of interest, they were just not there. So we were just limited to social demographics, just like in your own case. So we reported what we found and we acknowledged the limitations in the discussion section. Thank you. Okay, so because of time, other questions can be asked on the Academy. Once you log into the Academy, you can ask your question there. I'm going to respond to them. Thank you so much for your wonderful participation and attention. And pardon me for taking much of your time. Over to Chair.
Hello, everyone, and once again, I'm Mira West. As we come to the final session of our sensitization program, this is not the end. It is the moment everything begins to line up. You have sat in the room, absorbed the concepts, asked the hard questions, and sharpened your instincts. Now we move from exposure to application. Today, we announce the official launch of the BRM Clinic, a focused professional service designed to protect the value of your research by putting rigorous diagnosis, clarity, and methodical care at the center of every project. The BRM Clinic exists because serious research deserves more than one-size-fits-all help.
Too often, statistical support treats your work like a checklist. Run the numbers, hand over a table, move on. That leaves you exposed to hidden flaws, weak assumptions, and unavoidable delays. We are different. We begin by diagnosing a deep 90-minute research roadmap session that validates your design, pressure tests your assumptions, and delivers a clear, defensible plan for analysis and interpretation. It is the crucial first step that turns guesswork into certainty. What you will get from the BRM clinic is concrete and practical. You will leave the roadmap session with a prioritized list of actions, a sample size rationale that will stand up to reviewers, explicit guidance on variable operationalization and measurement, and a mapped pathway for the analysis that protects your timeline and your reputation. From there, we offer two distinct pathways to fit real needs. A guided pathway for researchers who want to build skill and ownership through hands-on collaboration, and an accelerated pathway with tight deadlines who need a publication-ready analysis delivered by experts. In addition, our BRM clinic rounds, also called group rounds, are designed to provide ongoing expert research guidance without the cost of private consulting. This is your weekly lifeline to solve problems, get unstuck, and join a community of your peers. Is for the student or researcher with a tight budget who needs consistent support and accountability. Every component is designed to preserve the integrity and impact of your work. Separately from the clinic, and as a part of our commitment to continuous improvement across the programs you have just completed, we will be conducting a post-sensitization evaluation. This evaluation is not a pass-fail test. Think of it instead as an applied assessment and feedback exercise designed to measure how effectively the sensitization content has translated into practical skills. We have run 6 sensitization programs over the last 6 months. The patterns we have seen inform the questions we will ask and the scenarios we will present. The goal is simple: to understand what worked, what didn't, and where additional support or clarification will make the biggest difference to your work. The post-sensitization evaluation will be organized into 3 batches to ensure that feedback is timely, manageable, and meaningful. Each batch will be invited in sequence with clear instructions, realistic applied scenarios, and opportunities to provide both structured responses and open feedback. We will analyze results in aggregate to identify common gaps and in individual form to offer tailored recommendations where appropriate. Participation will generate practical insights for you, not grades, and will help shape future training, resources, and support offerings. We emphasize again, this evaluation is conducted independently as a quality improvement activity tied to the sensitization series. It is not a gatekeeper for clinic services, nor a credentialing mechanism. It is an opportunity, a focused, respectful measure to help everyone move forward with more confidence. For those already thinking ahead, the clinic will operate with limited one-on-one capacity each month to preserve the quality and depth of our diagnostic work. If you anticipate needing a research roadmap session, plan to express interest early. Whether you choose the guided pathway, the accelerated pathway, or to join the weekly clinic rounds, you will be engaging with a process built to reduce the most costly research risks: wasted time, revised manuscripts, delayed graduation, and lost funding opportunities. We frame this as an investment in certainty, a small, deliberate step that protects the value of months or years of work. Over the coming days, we will publish full details about schedules, batch allocations for the post-sensitization evaluation, and instructions for booking roadmap sessions. For more information about all these events, timelines, how to sign up, what materials to prepare, and the specific dates for each evaluation batch, please monitor the official channels, our website, and the email communications you have been receiving. All updates, schedules, and registration links will be posted there first. If you do not receive an email after the official schedule announcements, please check your spam folder and then visit the website for the latest notices. This announcement is an invitation. It is an invitation to move from uncertainty to clarity, from hesitant analysis to confident, defensible work. You have invested time in these sensitization sessions. The post-sensitization evaluation gives you a way to translate that learning into actionable feedback. The BRM clinic gives you a way to convert that feedback into a robust research plan and, if you choose, expert execution. We know the stakes. We have seen what a single overlooked decision can cost: months of revision, grant setbacks, and lost momentum. That is why we designed our services to be diagnostic first and remedial second, to catch problems early, protect your timeline, and safeguard the impact of your work. If you are ready to move forward, watch your inbox and our website for the next steps. If you want to prepare now, gather your study questions, your current protocol draft, and any preliminary data or analysis outputs. These will make your diagnostic session far more productive. Thank you for being part of this journey through the sensitization program. This is only the beginning. We look forward to meeting you soon in the BRM clinic and supporting you as you give your project the clarity it deserves.